And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, today I'm taking a look at the game Le Havre. And you say, Vasel, you've already reviewed that one. You said you really liked it. I did. But the reason I'm talking about it again several years later is because I recently had the chance to play the two-players game, Le Havre, the Inland Port, and I played that with my daughter and she really liked it. And I said, well, if you like that one, you got to play one of the greatest games of all time, and I played it. And so this is kind of a re-review because I just wanted to go over the game in case you've never seen it before. I'll go over an overview of the gameplay in just a moment. But I wanted to tell people why I still like this so much. Because I get slammed, and rightly so, often because people say you don't like heavier Euros. And I usually don't. But this one really struck me. Sometimes they do. There's a few I like. This week I'm reviewing Trajan. I like that one too. Not to the extent I like this one though. I love Le Havre. Why is that? Let me tell you. Here's a setup of Le Havre, and this is a setup right now for two players. Now, there's one of the disadvantages of Le Havre is that the setup is quite different for depending on how many number of players you have. There are different cards that you set up here that are done. There are different cards in this deck here. I have found on Board Game Geek Online these really incredible sheets here. This doesn't come with the game. This is a two-player sheet, and it's a good spot to keep your resources. During the course of this game, you're going to get all these different resources. There are 8 main resources: fish, grain, cattle, wood, clay, iron, coal, and hides. And then each of those can be flipped over to basically an upgraded resource: smoked fish, bread, meat, charcoal, brick, steel, coke, and leather. So there's coal that you start the game with. It might possibly become coke later on. And this sheet does a good job because both of these are on the same tile, and you flip it over, and that could be confusing. Having this sheet helps a lot. So, and this sheet also gives you, it looks very complicated, but it's not. It just kind of gives you an indication about what's going to happen over the course of this game. The game takes place here on the main game board, and before I get asked about these cool little containers that hold all these resources, otherwise you stick them there just in piles. I got them in Korea, and I don't know where to get them in America, sorry. But they do help a lot, and if you can find little small containers, that makes sense. Each player has a ship, and so this is a two-player game. But it would play the same in a 3-player, 4-player. Each person's going to take turns, and so on your turn you move your ship to this spot, and then you'll look at the resources on that spot. This shows a fish and a clay, which means I'll add another fish to the fish spot, and I'll add a clay to the clay spot over there. And then when it's the next person's turn, they will jump to the next spot. They'll add a cattle and a wood. The next person adds a coin and an iron, and so on and so forth. On the very first turn, you don't know what's going to be coming because the tiles will be turned face down, but after that, they stay there for the rest of the game. Then on your turn, you have 2 different things you can do. And really, that's what makes the game so simple, but yet can be complex. One of the things you can do is simply take one of these offers. You can take the whole pile. And as the game progresses, these piles are going to get bigger and bigger. You might want money, you might want fish, you might want food, clay, iron, grain, or cattle. Those are the ones that will be showing up, and you can take one of those. The other thing you can do is you can take your person that matches your color, you can place them in a building and use that building. Now at the beginning of the game, and this depends on the number of players, you will have certain buildings that will be available. These buildings are owned by the town. And so you can go into a building and take the action of that building. And then you stay there. No one else can go in that building while you're there. Now, some buildings have a cost. Like up here, this one has a cost of 1 food, and then you pay that. But basically, you can go into a building. Now, over the course of the game, you can buy buildings. They have a cost here, and you will be able to, those will be your buildings. And then if another player uses those, they will have to pay you the costs. Or you can build a building. In fact, that's what these 3 are, the starting buildings. They're used for that purpose, and you can build one of the top buildings here that's available in the building proposals. Each of these buildings will give special actions that can be used, but at the top you can see this one costs 1 clay and 1 wood. If I build that, I'll place it in front of me. And so these buildings will give different things. Let's see, for example, here, the fishery. If you go there, you get 3 fish, plus 1 fish for every fisherman symbol you have on your buildings. At the smokehouse, you can use 1 energy to change up to 6 fish into smoked fish, and half a coin for each fish you do that for. Here you can change grain into bread, and you have to pay half an energy per grain. Now, one of the neat things about this game is I think it's very thematic in that each of the different tokens that you have has value. For example, smoked fish is worth 2 food, bread is worth 2 food, meat is worth 3 food. Charcoal can be used for 3 energy. Wood can be used for 1 energy. Wood, clay, and iron are all used for building. Coke and coal give you a lot of energy. And everything also later on in the game can be shipped with one of the special actions for a certain amount of francs. So you can see there that leather can be shipped for 4 francs, and coke for 5 francs, and steel for 8. So that's essentially the whole game. In a nutshell, is on your turn, you are going to either take one of these groups and then build a building. Now, you can buy a building as a free action on your turns, and you can even sell buildings if you desperately need the money. At the end of each turn, we take a look at this card, which seems very complicated, but in reality, you're only looking at 1 line on this card. So this is a 2-player game, so I'd only look at this line here. And everybody needs to pay 3 food. And if you can't pay 3 food, then pay money if you have it. And if you can't pay money, then you'll have to take out a loan, which is a pretty dreadful thing. Once everyone has done that, then some other things happen, like anyone who has at least 1 grain gets another grain. Everyone who has at least 2 cattle gets another cattle. Sometimes it will show you another building that's automatically built by the town. And then we will turn this card over, and it becomes a ship. And later on, players will be able to build this ship, which will provide them with food that comes every turn automatically, and also gives them the ability later on to ship goods to get points. Also, sometimes special buildings are added. These special buildings, there's a deck of cards that comes with the game for special buildings. But I also have the expansion deck, which are orange cards here. And so there's really a ton of special buildings. And since you'll probably have 4 or so of them come out during the course of the game, every game will be different. Like, for example, this special building is a stock market, and then the next special building is a fisherman's hut. And the next special building here is a hotel. So there's all kinds of different buildings. Here I can use 3 energy to get iron at a blast furnace. So these buildings can really change the strategy of the game. You're never sure what's going to come up, and it will change how you play. So the game will progress round after round after round. The amount of food you need to pay each round gets higher. The ships will get better. They turn into steel ships. And you will keep going until the end of the game. And at the end of the game, you're going to add up the value of all the buildings you have. So if I built this smokehouse or bought it, whatever, it's worth money to me, plus any money that I have currently. Now, there's a few other things I didn't mention, but I just wanted to give you a basic overview of how the game works. I often get very excited about games, and then that enthusiasm might be cooled after several plays. Well, I played this game. I don't know how many times I played it, but many, many, many times, and I enjoy it. Now, let's regroup and talk about some things that I have determined about the game since playing it the first time. First of all, I will never probably play this game again with more than 3 players. 2 and 3 is such a great spot with this game. It really plays well with 2 players, but I also like it with 3. With 4, you start having turns where there's only 1 action, and that's just kind of depressing. There's not a lot, you do 1 thing, and then you got to feed your people again. And so I wasn't so fond of that, and also the game can really slow down. Although there are some cool 4 and 5 player buildings, but what matter? Also, the infusion of the special edition cards is really cool. Not only does that mean you will likely never see a repeat of the same buildings, special buildings in each game, but some of those new special buildings are cool. Some give points to you just for owning them, or when people use them, or if you stand them. They're more complex. I'd be cautious about using them in a game with people who are playing the first time. Also, those player aids that I printed off Board Game Geek and stuff, as silly as it sounds, those really help focus that game down. I play this a lot, and still, there's times where I thought I had 4 wood, but that's a charcoal. Did I get a charcoal? If you have that mat, it just makes it easier to figure out. Now, I still love this game. Why? I think I like it. The main reason is the same reason I gave my first review. In many games, you have choices, and there's always one choice that's best. And it's the same thing in Le Havre. There's always one choice that's best. I don't always know what that choice is, but I'll tell you this. All the choices are so stinking good. I don't care. Someone goes here you can't take all the fish this turn. All right, I'll go do some bread. There's just so many different things to do, and all of them are fun. So many games are constantly slapping you down. Now, Le Havre can do that, but you really have to play pretty poorly for that to happen. Or your opponents play so awesomely that they just get you from the goods. If you really want food to feed your people, you'll have it each turn. If you really want to save up money to buy whatever building, you can. It's possible, but you might not win. What you need to do is to do all those things and then focus on that final goal. So, I don't know. It's cool. I'm putting a worker out, one worker, moving him around, and taking piles of resources. I think maybe that grabbing a whole pile of resources is another reason I like the game. That's just cool. I just got 7 fish because no one took it for a long time. That's neat, and the theme works. You are shipping these goods out. The goods make sense. Cattle, can you eat them? Of course not. Once they're cooked, meat, of course you can eat. Stuff like that just makes so much sense, and it makes sense that a cattle that's turned into meat will provide much, much more food than some fish will. So, I don't know, and the buildings, and the church, love that church building. It's not very useful in the game purposes, but love it thematically. You have to see the game for why. So, Le Havre, a great game, one that's been on my shelf for several years, and will continue to stay there.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews, as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find the latest board game news at Dicetowernews.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Fun Again Games, the world's best game source. Fun Again Games has over 5,000 games available. Check them out at funagain.com.
Respect your father and shut the door.